Welcome back to the Extra Point.
Heartbreak. We've all experienced it in our lives, whether it's a tough breakup, getting rejected from a school, anything along those lines. My most recent heartbreakup was watching my favorite quarterback, my Samoan Prince, go down with injury yet again. Anyways, we begin today's shoot with a very somber note. Hi everyone, I'm Dean, here with Miles and Nat. We're going to be talking about Tua Tagovailoa having yet another concussion injury, fourth one of his career so far, fourth one since 2022 and the first of the season. He has since been placed on IR, but it is now creating a lot of controversy as to whether he should play again. What are your guys' thoughts? Because it breaks my heart every time I get asked about it.
I'm going to let her go first.
I think that he needs to take a break for a while, whether he wants to or not. I think it's something that he needs to do. It's a conversation he needs to have with his family, because at this point, concussions are a very serious injury, and they can lead to a lot of fatalities, and they have. And CTE is very serious, and he's at risk for that. And Miles, you can.
I think he's just simply cooked unless he gets like a guard and helmet. Like, he's just risking his life. Like, either your O-line has to get better, or like he just has to figure out a way. Like, I'm going to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because a lot of people do blame the O-line. The O-line's actually not that bad. I mean, there's only so much your O-line can do in that situation, especially because the most recent time Tua got the concussion, he kind of went headfirst into a guy's chest, so he could have slid. There's a lot of ways he could have, went around the situation, but he chose, he was trying to get the crowd fired up. The Dolphins were getting smoked, as they always do, by Buffalo. So, trying to lean in with your shoulder, make a big hit, make the crowd go wild, and instead he made everyone in Miami cry that night instead. So, I mean, it happens. I mean, it broke my heart. And my question is, the whole thing is whether or not he should keep playing. Do you guys think, I know you brought up the guarded helmet, which is a really good idea. Do you think there's anything else he could do to really prolong his time in the NFL?
I think he could find a way to play safer. Maybe not as fun or like enthusiastic or like crazy like his running, but if he finds a way to play with his IQ, use his arm more than his legs, there's a possibility, strong possibility.
I'm not really sure. I think, like I said earlier, I think it's best if he takes a break, and then after that, after many talks with doctors and professionals and with his family and all of his loved ones, then he should make a decision, because at the end of the day, it is his decision to make and not something that we as fans or his coaches or his team can make for him. It's something that has to come from him. And I don't really know what's best for him at this point. Only he does.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great answer. It's so tough to tell, because I know what the Dolphins did this offseason was because what they were trying to do was they were like, you know what, try and slim down a little bit. Because last season, he was much more bulky, he was more burly, he put on a lot of muscle, put on a lot of weight to prevent the concussions, and it worked. Like, he wasn't really sliding in, like he was sliding more. He wasn't really going for those like shoulder-to-shoulder hits, and it worked. He didn't get concussed, thank God. This year, however, they're like, you know what? How can Tua take his game to the next level? So he slimmed down, he cut that weight, and we're like, all right, well, maybe he's going to be a little bit more agile. That didn't really work. So my instant thought was like, well, maybe if he, bulks back up, puts that weight back on, he has that more durability to where he doesn't really have to go in, slide, doesn't really have to worry about being too mobile, and he can kind of just stay in the pocket. So, I mean, that's probably my best idea as for what Tua can do. And it's just tough to hear. I mean, there's been a lot of doctors that have come out and said, like, there's been doctors, even the coach of the Raiders, Antonio Pierce, literally said, if I'm Tua, I'm hanging it up. And they also said Tony Gonzalez, Hall of Fame tight end, they're like, listen, Shannon Sharp said it too, like, you got to think about retiring at this point. And it's devastating for a young man that prolonged into his career to be thinking about that. But it's tough. From my big question to you guys though is, what do you think like the biggest thing like the NFL can take away from like Tua's story, and how can they make the game like a safer place? Do you think there's really anything that they could do?
They could probably do like studies, tracking, or like find like a analyst way of trying to prevent concussions. I think that would be a smarter way and like statistically proven so they could have preventions to do that.
I don't know how much the NFL can do without changing the game of football. And already recently, especially in the last 3 or 4 years, there's been so many rule changes for safety reasons. And as a fan of all sports, I don't like when there's like that many changes to the games, because it stops being the core of the game. And I'm not sure what the NFL can do. I do agree that they can take some money and invest that into research. But again, that's not necessarily the NFL's job. That has to be coming from an outside source, in my opinion.
That's very true. I mean, it's such a tricky thing to tell, because now they are starting to do the studies on like CTE and God forbid brain damage to possibly come out of all of this. And it's tough. It really is. And it's so devastating that people do have to experience that, unfortunately. But hopefully there is a way that people can take away and kind of learn from this so that they can make the game safer for athletes. Maybe they can do more with the helmets and stuff. But it's definitely tough. But on that note, we're going to wrap up a rather somber segment here, but hopefully it can end on a positive note. Hopefully Tua does come back to the NFL, has a healthy rest of his career, wins my Miami Dolphins a Super Bowl. Please, that would be wonderful. Rest up, Tua. And with that being said, we are going to send it over to the next segment.
Ladies and gentlemen, college football season is in full swing. We are entering week 4 this weekend, and I am joined by some beautiful guests here in Nolan and Adam.
I'm very appreciative of the compliment.
Stop, dude. We're going to talk some college football, guys. So we're 3 weeks in. We've had some crazy upsets. I'm sure you know about that.
Yeah.
We've had some very
Notre
interesting.
Dame fan.
Yeah. I'm sure we've had some very interesting moments, and I want to hear what do you guys think so far about the season?
Well, you called me out with Notre Dame, and I'm still very concerned about Notre Dame. They may have just put up 66 against Purdue, but Purdue is towards the bottom of the
Big Ten.
Just Big Ten and like all of football.
Yeah.
But how are you going to lose to NIU? I have not been a fan of their quarterback at all.
Now, here's my thing with Notre Dame, right? They went in the Kyle Field week 1, arguably the toughest place to play in college football, and beat Texas A&M.
Mm-hmm.
That was a convincing win. And then they come home in the week 2. It's a bye game against Northern Illinois, and they lose.
I have a perfect explanation. It's their quarterback.
You think Ryan?
You think Riley Leonard's the issue?
If you watch the game, Notre Dame won against A&M because of their defense and their running game. They lost to NIU. The defense put up under 20 points. Riley Leonard was struggling like crazy that game.
He threw 2 picks.
And then, like, that's all the evidence you need. The backup quarterback last year, he went on and won a bowl game. And then we're going to bring in a guy from Duke who just broke his ankle last year?
I'm honestly not as concerned for Notre Dame as you are. I think they have a pretty easy schedule down the stretch here. There is one game that I'm looking at, though, their final game of the season against USC. USC has looked really good this year so far. And I think that they could be a tough matchup because it's in the Coliseum, too.
Yeah. But Notre Dame always has like a habit of beating them in the Coliseum.
We'll see if that continues. Adam,
I think you kind of talk with UNC or USC, as I am a UNC fan. But that brings me kind of into my main point is the new conferences. I think obviously the Pac-12 has kind of itself, at least for now, they're on their way back potentially in 2026. But I think everything really is going to come out over the next few weeks as we see teams really get into conference play. Obviously,
yes.
College game day this week, going to be in Norman for OU's first SEC game. And the big thing is the Big 12. I don't feel like they're now the same without Oklahoma and Texas. I think you guys can agree. Really right now, well, from what I saw, and the 2 best teams I feel like in the Big 12 played each other last week, in Arizona and Kansas State. I mean,
really?
I think those might be the 2
I think
best.
the 2 best might be playing this weekend, Utah and Oklahoma State.
I think those are 2. Ollie Gordon, very good player.
like
Utah's been solid as well.
Utah's
There's
quiet.
no real
They're quiet.
big name team now, though, in the Big 12,
I agree.
which I think when we're talking now college football playoff, I think that could hurt the Big 12 a little bit.
Yeah, and you look at Texas and Oklahoma, they were the Big 12. Those 2 teams, like, they're the teams, like, you look at them and you're like, Big 12. and now
Exactly.
they're in the SEC.
Now
and
they're in the SEC with Bama, Georgia, everybody
yeah,
else.
now the Big 12 adding Utah, Arizona State, and Colorado. Yes, they're great additions, but it's hard to replace Texas and Oklahoma. Now, this season we do have some teams that are exceeding our expectations and some teams that might be, not doing as well as we thought. Do you guys have any teams in particular that you think are exceeding expectations?
Exceeding? I can't think off the top of my head because I've been looking at all the games. There haven't been really like any games that have like stood out to me. I mean, other than the Notre Dame, Northern Illinois, and just Florida State as a whole, there's nothing that really has like stood out to me other than Arch Manning.
Yeah, you bring up Arch Manning. I think Texas is one of the teams that has looked great this year.
I was like thinking about like saying them to your question, but like I felt like that was like way too obvious of an answer because they're the number one
Yeah.
team in the nation right now. They were number two.
But they went into the Big
But
House.
they look like
And
the best team in the country right now.
They defeat the defending national champion Michigan, who I think is a fraud, by the way. Fraud with a
Absolutely.
capital F. The Michigan's
Yeah,
not the same team they were.
they're on to their backup quarterback
But,
already in
yeah,
4.
but still, Texas, this could be their year. I don't know.
I wouldn't complain.
Yeah.
They almost had it last year. Was it last year or 2 years ago?
Last year they
yeah.
played in the college football
Last year,
playoff
they
and lost
beat
to
Bama
Washington.
early and lost.
Yeah. Adam, what do you think?
I'm going to stay in the SEC with mine, and a team that has had an absolutely dynamic offense, more specifically in the past game, and that's Tennessee. That's a team that they're now ranked 6th in the country, and I absolutely love the game of Nico Iamaleava, the quarterback there. He's currently through 3 weeks my pick to win the Heisman.
Really?
I think he's my pick right now to win the Heisman.
That's
Maybe
valid.
a little bit of a
I
little
like it.
sleeper. You can get him, I
Yeah.
believe, at 17-2 right now. A little odds
Yeah.
for you. But they've had 191 points over their first 3 games. Now, albeit 69 of those came against Chattanooga, and 71 of them came against, yeah, that's a very nice number. Thank you, Nolan. And 71 of those came against Kent State, which arguably might be the worst team in all of FBS right now. And 51 of those came in a convincing win at neutral site against NC State. But I think this week when they go to Oklahoma, that is the first big test we see for the Vols. And I think that we're going to really see if they are a top 5 team in the country or not this week.
Yeah, and Tennessee, you were talking about NC State. That was a 41-point win against a ranked team at the time. That was
Yeah.
a very impressive win.
Now,
Tennessee is
now
definitely.
NC State doesn't look necessarily like a ranked
Yes,
team, but
I do agree, but that's still an impressive win nonetheless.
it's still an impressive win nonetheless.
Because
A
it's in
powerful
Charlotte, it's in
program.
North Carolina. It's kind of North Carolina State's ground, even though it's not necessarily their home field. Still a very impressive win. My team, personally, Miami. The Hurricanes. Cam Ward is the Heisman favorite right now. Week 1, they went into Gainesville and absolutely destroyed Florida. I mean, it was like 41-24, 41-17.
41-17.
Something like that, yeah. Very impressive win. And then they've played 2 bye games in week 2 and 3, but still, Miami looks very, very impressive early. I would not be surprised if they make a run in the ACC.
I think they can most likely win the ACC this year.
Yeah, so we have those teams that we think are exceeding our expectations. We also have some teams that are disappointing us. You want to take it away?
I think
Oh, I cannot wait to say this. I've had so many issues with this team over the year. I mean, I don't like Alabama still, but my answer is FSU.
I mean, that's the obvious.
That's a clear cut.
0-3. That makes
Yeah.
me so happy. That makes me so happy.
That is, believe it or not, that is the second 0-3 start in the last 5 seasons when Florida State has been under Mike Norvell. There's obviously now been some things coming out within the program, the fan base, that DJ Uyagale should be benched in favor of Brock Len, who started in place of Jordan Travis when he obviously went down with that horrible injury a season ago. But mine, I'm going to stay in the state of Florida with another team that they weren't ranked at the beginning of the season, but I think there were some expectations for them, and that was Florida. We saw Graham Mertz, their quarterback, is we thought was an NFL-level prospect. Many thought, really, at the beginning of the season that Mertz Ward might have been on a somewhat of a similar level. That has been far from the case, I think. They're obviously 1-2. Their lone win coming against Samford,
Yeah.
obviously an FCS program. But in a game that we thought was competitive, obviously the Miami one was never close. And after the A&M loss now, there's people coming after Billy Napier already, and it's only been a couple seasons. So this has been very concerning. There's a lot of red flags going on right now in Gainesville.
Yeah, Florida is definitely a team that is struggling. We talked about earlier, they lost big in Gainesville to Miami, and then Texas A&M comes in and beats them too. And Billy
That
Napier,
game was not as close to the score set it was.
And Billy Napier, I believe, is on the hot seat. I have a bet with my dad right now.
All
that
right.
Billy Napier is going to get fired before the end of the season. He thinks he's not going to.
I
Dad,
actually think he will.
Dad,
Unless-
I know you're going to be watching this at some point. I'm taking your money soon when Billy Napier gets fired. So just a heads up. Now, my 2 disappointing teams, I have a little bit outside the box. My first one is Houston. Houston That week 1 loss to, I believe it was UNLV.
Yeah.
That was, I believe they got shut out, I think.
Like,
I mean, UNLV is like 3-0.
Yeah,
I was
UNLV
gonna
is
say,
a
they're
very
really
just
good
went
they're
into
team.
Lawrence, beat
UNLV
Kansas.
is good, but still, home game against a group of 4 school, or group of 5. It's still not a great look to get. I think it was a shutout, or it was like, if not, it was like a 20, 30-point loss. And then but the week after, they go into Norman and play Oklahoma, and they play them close. You know, it was a 16-12 final, which I kind of impressive because I think Oklahoma's kind of good, even though it might be a little fraudulent, but we'll see this weekend. And week 3, they play Rice, which was, they bounced back with a resounding victory, but I don't know. Houston, I argue,
kind of
is one of
flaky.
they're one of the worst Power 4 teams. And LSU is my other one. LSU is ranked. Now hear me out on this.
I'll hear you out first.
So
Another team I don't like.
USC beats them in week 1, and we saw the Brian Kelly post-game press conference.
Obviously
He
not good.
tore into his players after that game. Then in week 2 they play, I think it was an FCS school, and they struggled. It wasn't really that impressive a win. And then they go into South Carolina week 3, a game that, you know, South Carolina is like kind of in the mid-tier of the SEC, but I don't know. It was a close win.
I feel like-
I'm kind of a little pessimistic on LSU this year.
Here's my one argument about it, is I feel like with the SEC and how big those programs are, it is so tough, especially when you get behind to win on the road.
Yeah, it was like they were down 17.
They were down
nothing at one
17
point,
early.
right? Yeah,
And
it was.
I feel like they really had to dig deep to win that game, and that's kind of the only reason I could play a little devil's advocate on you there.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's LSU in a tough conference this year, and we'll see how it ends up going. But college football is in full swing. We have week 4 coming up this weekend. We got plenty left, and I'm sure it's going to be an exciting season. So we'll see you guys for the next segment of Extra Point.
What is going on, everyone? I am here with my fellow diehard Mets fan, Nolan Spur. Today, we are talking Grimace, that crazy mascot over there. The Mets, for whatever reason, we had the GOAT of mascots before in Mr. Met. Now we have another GOAT of mascots in Grimace. Nolan, tell us a little bit about how this man changed our team.
Well, he came out to throw the first pitch out on June 12th of this year. And people may question why it was that day specifically. Because it was his birthday. You know, you got to be a little respectful. But at the time that he went to go throw it out, we were 29-37. That's not good. And as Mets fans, we're tired of not being good. And this was supposed to be our year. And at that point, it wasn't. So then he went and threw out the first pitch. And ever since then, our season has turned around. Because ever since then, we've been 55-31, which now makes us 86-68. I did have to use my calculator for that. And we're now in the playoffs right now. And we're in the wild card, which at this point of the year, we did not expect that at all. But what's great is that Grimace is not the only mascot that we have this year. We also even have one of our players as one of our mascots in Jose Iglesias, or as we also call him, Candelita, because he is actually a singer who released a song in the middle of the season, and that song is called Oh My God, and this fan made like a sign for the Mets, so now every time they hit a home run, every time you go in the dugout, you hold the OMG sign.
Are you familiar with this song at all?
Whatever was played before.
Yeah, I did just casually blow it in their ear.
Yeah, so
Loud.
with this guy, Jose Iglesias, the reason he recorded that song in the first place is because he didn't have a career to start the season. He was not on a team, so he decided to become a singer, record a Spanish pop song called OMG, but the Mets eventually picked him up for their farm system. He dominated at AAA, and they just had to call him up because they had no source of offense. And let me show you how this man has helped us win games. In 73 games of play, he has a .323 batting average, 71 hits, and 24 RBIs, we would not be where we are offensively without this man. But it goes beyond just Iglesias because we have a young superstar in Mark Vientos who has hit 24 homers, batting .270 with an .841 OPS in 102 games, walking us off against the Cincinnati Reds.
I'd also like to add that in previous years, he has not been putting up those numbers. It has been much worse. We have another third baseman who's in our farm system who we thought was going to be the answer, but then he was struggling, so then we gave Vientos a shot. Vientos was struggling, so then we were lost at the beginning of this year. We had both of them up at one point, but then Brett Beatty, the other one, continued to struggle. Vientos took a huge step in his career, and he's now having a career season.
So do you have any questions regarding this board, regarding the Mets' overall turnaround?
This is a genuine question. When was the last time you guys made the playoffs? Like, I just don't.
2022.
Thank you.
And we choked in the playoffs against the Padres, who we may be playing in the playoffs this year if we make it.
Yeah, we did split that series against them, but luckily for us, we have the tiebreaker over the Diamondbacks should it come down to a last season or a season-ending tie. We also are 2 games ahead of the Atlanta Braves, which is huge because everyone was expecting the Braves to be one of the best teams in baseball this year. Not the case. We've been getting it done, and it's really going to come down to one last series against the Braves again.
And the one big factor that's been coming up is that we have a new injury on our team, and that is Francisco Lindor, who is arguably, not so much anymore, but he was arguably the MVP of the year. And he struggled at the beginning of the year, just as the entire team was. And then out of nowhere, he just starts hitting the ball, he starts fielding. He's the Francisco Lindor that we signed for $300 million. And just even a week or two ago, we were getting no hit by the Blue Jays. It may have been the 9th inning. But then Francisco Lindor comes up and hits a home run in the 9th inning to tie the game. And then the Mets went on to score 6 runs that inning and came out with the win. But one thing I do want to add about Grimace is that we talked about him throwing out the first pitch. I don't know if you guys know, at Fenway, the Red Sox stadium, they have one seat, I think it's red.
The red seat.
They gave that to Ted Williams because that was the farthest ball hit in that stadium. The Mets decided to give Grimace a seat because that's obviously as equal as hitting the farthest home run ever. But the Mets have been 3-0 since that, and they've outscored their opponents 22-2.
I have a question.
Yes.
Who have they played in those 3 games?
It was the Nationals.
Yeah.
So that may be part of it, but
To be
let
fair,
us have our
To
victories.
be fair, we are leading the Philadelphia Phillies 9-3 as of right now. So it's definitely helping us beat those good teams like we need to. And overall, if you let's take a look at the pitching staff real quick. First half, we have the worst rotation in baseball. After a really hot start for our rotation, it just goes cold. We have no pitching, but as of recently, we've had one of the best rotations in the league. We've been a top 5 rotation in the second half. You look at David Peterson, he started 19 games with a 2.85 ERA and 89 strikeouts. You have Jose Butto, was one of the best starters in the league to start the season, but he gets hurt, comes back as a reliever, and still dominates. We have Sean Manaea, who has a 2.69 ERA in his last 18 starts. Phenomenal. Jose Quintana, in his last 5 starts, has a .29 ERA. And another pitcher, he's not as good, but he did have a very iconic singular pitch for our team, or singular inning for our team. His name is Jake Diekman. He's the man who got Aaron Judge looking to secure our season sweep of the New York Yankees.
You forgot to add Judge got intentionally walked 4 times.
He did. and-
Not even,
yeah, but
not even
we're talking
not
about the
even,
Mets, though.
not
It
even the
wasn't
Red
smart
Sox.
decision.
Yeah.
Not
I
even
also
the
just
Red
want to add
Sox
the
done
Yankees
that.
swept the Phillies too. So like
They
you
did.
guys
So
are,
it's like a game of rock, paper, scissors almost.
But, like, we swept
unless
the Yankees, though.
unless we take 3 or 4,
Yeah.
sweep the
Wait,
Phillies
I
how's
do
Diaz
have,
in this
doing?
series.
Terrible.
Yeah.
I would like to say something because there's a lot of names on this board here.
Yeah.
But there's one name I haven't seen, and he's been a big question during
Wait,
the
let's
trade
turn
deadline.
around.
During the trade deadline.
Yes.
And possibly at the end of the season. What do you think's gonna happen with Pete Alonso?
I think he's going to resign. He said it. He wants to be a Met. I mean,
Do you think like if he does bad and however long the playoff run is, do you think the Mets want to resign him?
I think they do. I think all the playoffs in these last couple of weeks are going to do is affect how much money he makes.
Definitely. And what I like about Pete Alonso is the other night he called for a team meeting, and he was the only player who spoke. He was a motivational pep talk for the whole team. And then the night after, he goes out, hits a home run, delivers on his word. So I really like Pete Alonso as a player and as a leader. I don't see Steve Cohen allowing him to walk. He's going to pay him the money that he wants.
And one thing I want to add, going back to Grimace, everyone wants to blame Grimace for being the reason why they have been on such a hot roll lately. But on May 29th, I went to a Mets game, and that was the game where we knew that the Mets, or we all thought that the Mets were gonna just end of the season. We had a player throw his glove into the stands, he got ejected, and then he got cut the next day. But when I was at the game, I put a bag over my head, and the players saw it, and then they went on to have a team meeting after that game. So you want to blame Grimace all you want for the win? I think it's me.
What happened
It's
in those
reasonable.
2 weeks between Grimace and you?
I don't remember. But I'm
Well,
really
they do say that the Mets are memeing their way into the playoffs because not only did we have Grimace go out for us, we had Kevin James, the mall cop, throw out the first pitch. We had the Hawk Tua girl throw out the first pitch. So it's a combination of things that are getting us in. And I think Nolan is partially responsible. But that wraps it up for this segment, LFGM. And I'm saying it right now, we're having a Subway series this year.
2000 repeat.
Meet the Mets, meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have the time of your life because the Mets are real.